Hi guys and welcome to episode 27 A Beat to the Punch. I'm joined on the line tonight by Riku Haikila. Riku, just me and you tonight, brother. How's things?
Good. I'm just currently in Sweden, walking around the streets asking people if they know who Tyson Fury is. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows who Wilder is. So Joshua must be the biggest athlete in the world.
What about Otto Wallens? Do you know who he is?
I mean, he wasn't even the back pages, but does anybody in the UK know who Otto Wallen is?
No, but Bob Arum has says that, we shouldn't overlook this guy because he knew a boxer 30 years ago who turned out to be quite good for Sweden. I
I
don't know,
mean,
I don't understand what that was all about, that tweet, but I
yeah,
suppose.
this guy fought against Floyd Patterson three times and won once. So I mean, Bob Arum's lived long enough that there will be a heavyweight from every nation in the world that has beaten the champion that he can always refer back to that.
It's not even that. Floyd Patterson. You're talking about
Yeah,
Floyd Patterson. He's fucking. It was it Customato used to train Floyd Patterson. I think it
yeah,
was. Aye, and that's how old it was. That was when like a young cuss was training this guy.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, well, let's get started. We were just talking off air, and it was like, we thought we should get a pod out because we took another week off last week because there's nothing happening in the ring that excites us. But tonight's show's kind of all the stuff that's happening outside the boxing, all the bullshit, all the politics, and all the stuff that we love to have a right good rant about. So, let's not put it off any longer. Let's start off with the big news in boxing, the biggest news about, and it's that AJ and Andy Ruiz are going to Saudi Arabia for their rematch, or are they?
Yeah, are they? Uh, yeah. So they Eddie Hearn has announced that the fight is taking place, and he's held a press conference with some Saudi Arabia guy who doesn't apparently work for the government that nobody's ever heard of, that has said that he will make sure that a 15,000 person stadium is built in the next few months, probably using Yemeni slave labor, uh, on the outskirts of Riyadh, where this will be hosted, and they will have a concert or entertainment before that. The benchmark for this entertainment is David Guetta. So buy your tickets, everyone. Biggest heavyweight fight in the world. Although neither Andy Ruiz or Joshua were at the press conference, and Andy Ruiz hasn't tweeted anything about it, and has put out a video saying that the fight isn't happening. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, let's just, there's so much to kind of digest with this, look, the press conference the other day, it was fucking bizarre that Eddie Hearn is sitting there with this guy who we don't know, and with a big poster, Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua behind him, for him to promote the fight without any of the fighters there, without anybody, just Eddie Hearn and this guy on a stage. And it looked fucking bizarre, and it just seems like that was kind of, if this event does happen, that I don't think it's going to get any less weird than that. That was like the benchmark right there, and then it's only just going to get worse as it goes on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we start off by having it in Saudi Arabia. So the front runners were a few weeks ago. Eddie Hearn said that Cardiff was 80%. Uh, they ruled out the US as an option. Then Saudi Arabia sort of swooped in. Apparently, they had offers around the world, and Eddie Hearn feels that he should be taking boxing around the world, and nobody else has put up a big event in the Middle East. Although Eddie Hearn did mention that he went to the WBSS final to see, and everything ran really well, which was a big event. So I think the first thing is, what do you think about the fight being in Saudi Arabia involving a Mexican American and British fighter?
Um, to be honestly, I don't think that we should be taking anything today with these countries. I think that they're regressive. I think that they're oppressive. I think the fact that they don't like. We're talking about having the biggest heavyweight fight in the world, or one of them, if outside of Fury Wilder, and we're sitting here going, like, who's going to cover this? Because we can't. There's women, female reporters. Can they go? Would they be able to go? white journalists, you're sitting thinking, what about their safety? You know, Saudi Arabia, we all know that it's got ties and links to, it just doesn't sit right with me that, that's the kind of place that we've got to take this. And you kind of, it just doesn't sit right with me that, that's the kind of place that we've got to take this. And you kind of touched
Hello?
on it. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? And you kind of hit the nail on the head when you says, I mean, with this guy at the press conference, nobody knows who he is, and you know, we all know that he's going to be Saudi government, and that also doesn't sit right with me that these people can. They can kind of, we're not seeing like Top Rank take something somewhere, It's not a promotional company or that, these people are going to use AJ and Ruiz to push out, like, use them as a propaganda tool because they're a government. And that doesn't sit right with me. There's a lot of it morally doesn't sit right with me with taking any sporting event over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Amnesty International that mentioned the idea of this being sports washing. So, I mean, Eddie Hearn and others have said the Formula E had a competition there, and they looking to do other major sporting events. And I think it's all a part of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman's kind of grand vision to make Saudi more Western. But I don't think, from a boxing standpoint, I just don't think it makes sense. So, beside the politics, why would he have the biggest heavyweight fights this year uh, in Saudi Arabia, which isn't easy for anybody to travel to, despite whatever they say about visas, and a country where it has no heritage of boxing? And even when we look at the Thriller in Manila or Rumble in the Jungle, we all accept that the Rumble in the Jungle was basically Don King, working with a corrupt government to get to stage this fight, and it's sort of a blemish on the actual events. I mean, Joshua and Hearn have been very vocal about the fact that they want to build a British global superstar in Joshua to be based from the UK and becoming a global star. And I just feel having an event in a country that has a questionable human rights record and also one that doesn't have any heritage or any links to boxing diminishes that, because I think it's a missed opportunity to host a global event which will be massive in the US, massive in the UK, in an iconic boxing venue, and they're taking it to a country that doesn't have any track record of delivering boxing events of this scale. I mean, do we know even whether they can produce events of this scale that are going to be watched and streamed around the world by tens or hundreds of millions of people potentially?
Yeah, I mean that's a very valid point. I mean, have they even got the infrastructure to host something like this? We've also, I mean, when we seen the wrestling, what's it called? The not the
Yeah,
WWF,
WWE or
yeah, and the WWE went there. I mean, I don't know if there was insistence and things get changed, but there was things happening where it would be 5 minutes of just talking up how good Saudi Arabia was, and that's a big worry for me. With this, it's like it's just going to be like going to get used as this mouthpiece kind of thing. But also, I mean, do we think that Hearn's really serious about this, or is he just using it to maybe drive up the prices of the fight? Maybe somebody else comes in and offers to, that's the baseline. If you offer us more, the fight will happen in Vegas or it will happen here.
well, there was reports saying that they are getting, so Hearn will be getting 40 million as a side fee for the fight, or Matchroom, and that's much more than anybody's willing to pay in the UK or US. So if you think of Ruiz getting $9 million, Joshua maybe getting 20, $30 million, and then you add the pay-per-view revenues and everything on top. So I think it's lucrative for everyone on paper, but is it good for the long-term health of boxing and the long-term reputation of Joshua? I just find it's quite short-sighted to have the fight there rather than having it in Las Vegas, Madison Square Garden, or even Tijuana, Mexico.
Well, do you know what I found weird about all that? I mean, we found out that there's how this is all getting split and what the site fees were. Is that how come when any other fight We never hear this information. Where did this come from? You know, is this? I don't understand how this information is now out there, and we've also got like these reporters who seem to know the ins and outs of Andy Ruiz's contract. You know,
Yeah,
these are things this isn't a norm. This isn't stuff that's known. But it seems that there's stuff being leaked, or people getting fed information to push a narrative.
it's the what I call the hernification of boxing, which is you all started with the. Remember when Hearn did the Quig Frampton offers on social media, holding the checks, and before this all happened, it wasn't common practice that everybody became boxing accountants. All this information was in the public domain. And I do feel that, as you said, it's probably a case of all this information being fed to make Ruiz look greedy and trying to force a hand. And I don't think it's necessarily good for, the way that we should be conceiving boxing, that people are worried about contracts and other stuff. We just want the events. We just want announcements when fights are actually happening and both parties have agreed. We don't want press conferences before both fighters are sitting there and saying that they're looking forward to the events.
Now, and there's also another part of this that we've not touched on yet, and that is the zone. Now, we didn't think that the zone would be happy with this being outside the America, and I still hold that belief. But from what I understand, is that the zone are going to be paying pretty much pennies for the rights to this. From
Yeah,
what I heard on another podcast, you're talking about under 10 million. And when granted, it is going to be on during the day and stuff like that. But do we think that, I mean, this could cause issues for Hearn and DAZN in the long run? Because at the end of the day, DAZN cannot be happy with having Anthony Joshua fighting in the afternoon in the US.
yeah, I think it's a big missed opportunity for the zone to drive subscriptions, particularly with there being a US heavyweight fighting for defending their world title against the marquee name of their stable. So I think it's not good for them, and I
Also
mean
a
it's better for
Mexican heavyweight as well. You know, we know Mexicans like
yeah,
getting behind their fighters.
yeah, and it's better for Sky time wise. But I still, I still think that just having an event in the UK or US and having that familiarity and having the crowd interact, not like the other shows that we've seen from Saudi Arabia where all the men are sitting on their phones, not even caring about the boxing. Um, so I think it just won't look right and the atmosphere just won't feel right. I mean, we all watched the World Boxing Super Series final and it didn't really feel like a proper fight, did it? Of
It
the
felt like
magnitude of the fight.
it felt that the World Boxing Super Series felt like it was an amateur fight in a school gymnasium. That was the kind of
Yeah,
atmosphere. You know, whereas, you know, you've kind of get parents sitting there that only want to see their kid fighting and they're not interested in the other end of the other fights. And, you know, there was zero action, zero shouting. You know, it was just everything about it felt wrong. And you could tell, you know, the event itself lost something for going there.
yeah, and I know Hearn pushed the narrative always that I want boxing events to be like a party where people dress up and go for a night out and drink, and now it's all about not drinking and respecting other cultures. But I do think people drinking and getting Larry adds to the atmosphere, and that's always Joshua is not fighting at home, nor is Ruiz, and from a management perspective also, you've got your guy fighting the biggest fight of his career. And this for Joshua is if he loses this fight, where does he go? I mean, this could be the end. He's made enough money. Why won't you try and stack the advantages and put him in a position where he's fighting in a familiar surrounding? Unless, of course, you're working with a commission where maybe some of the rules and some of the testing are more lax, and maybe that helps others more than others.
Yeah, I mean that's another aspect. I mean, has Saudi Arabia even got a boxing commission?
Well, and that's, people are saying that Ruiz shouldn't complain or, he's signed the rematch clause, but I'm sure Heyman, who's a Harvard trained lawyer, would be able to say that, well, why would, in the rematch clause, like, why would we fight a fight in a country where there's no boxing commission, we don't know the rules, there's no precedence of doing this stuff? Why would we allow one of our biggest commodities to go over to fight the fight there? I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
surely the rematch clause doesn't say do whatever you want. You've signed it, so you can do whatever you want. Have it in the moon.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Ruiz in his video was kind of touching on more the security aspect about being an American Catholic and kind of going over there and, worrying for his own safety, which I kind
Isn't
of.
there a travel plan between the US and Saudi Arabia? Maybe? I'm not sure. Is he even allowed to travel there? That's the question.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I know that the Yanks and the Saudis, I mean, they deal in arms, so I imagine there would be some way of getting there,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just that the full thing seems so bizarre. There was another aspect I wanted to bring up there, but I've actually forgot it and I haven't marked it down, so I think we'll just need to leave that there. But well, that's what it was. Is do you think that Andy Ruiz's complaints are legitimate? And I mean, I've also seen some of the like your Chris Mannix, who I just can't stand anymore. He used to have a decent wee pod, but
Yeah.
it's terrible now. Chris Mannix is saying that Andy Ruiz got it in his backyard the first time, and AJ should get to pick this time. It should be up to AJ. And I was thinking Andy Ruiz was a late replacement, and nobody in that at Madison Square Garden was there to see Andy Ruiz. That was a Joshua crowd. That event was Joshua's big coming out in America, and it backfired. That wasn't an Andy Ruiz event. That was an AJ
No.
event. So I don't understand that kind of narrative because it was in America. That crowd was pro AJ, or at least they
Yeah.
were until things started turning for him.
Yeah, and I think everything's within reason, right? So if the rematch clause gives the power to Team Joshua, uh, I think if they were to propose to have the fight in Las Vegas or, maybe not the UK or the UK, and there was the right money involved, Ruiz would comply and agree to that. But if he doesn't want to go to Saudi Arabia and he doesn't feel he should be going to a country that doesn't have a boxing commission or any heritage of doing this kind of stuff, then I don't think, from a management perspective, I think it will be poor management on his side or his manager's side, which is Al Heyman, to put him into that position.
Do you think that there's? I'm throwing this at you for pure left field, just because it's fun to do stuff like this sometimes. Do you think that there's an aspect here that Matchroom and AJ that they're trying to rock the boat? Do you think that they're trying to upset Ruiz and take it to a legal battle that maybe AJ's either doesn't want to fight and they don't want to say that, or he just maybe doesn't feel ready to be getting back in there?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of this where they want to get him in the ring quickly because we've been seeing Andy Ruiz living life. He's not been training in the gym, really, has he?
Mm.
He's been living life. So I think they want to get this fight quick and they want to catch him off guard and they want to put him in an uncomfortable position. But I think the other aspect is they just want to have a fallback in case Joshua loses. Everybody's rich enough that everybody can continue with their lives.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, let's stay on Matchroom. Yeah, we get the big news, the worst kept secret in boxing, or at least one of them anyway. That Billy Joe Saunders has now signed with Matchroom. Now, this is a good move for Billy Joe, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he had many other options because I think the other ones that were mentioned were top rank, but top rank don't have middleweights or many super middleweights. So I think it's a sensible move for Billy Joe.
I've always been of the opinion that Billy Joe Saunders, his popularity is nowhere near his skill level. He's so undervalued by the British public, the British boxing fans. Um, I think going to Matchroom will open them to the your casual fans and your Matchroom FC. These guys will start getting behind them and stuff like that. But I've got to admit, I find it quite funny that, I mean, to be fair, Billy Joe Saunders' drug violation
Yeah,
was a wee bit harsh. But I found it quite funny that since Dillian White failed his drug test, we've had Povetkin and Huey Fury announced, and that Huey Fury signed with him, and new Billy Joe Saunders. It's like they just don't give a fuck. You know that you have Eddie Hearn saying ban these guys for life in one hand, and then he's fucking just firing them at you in the other hand. Is you know the guy does not give a fuck, does he?
no, I think it's always it's a case by case basis. So if somebody puts out a video where Eddie Hearn said something about how how Billy Joe wouldn't have failed under him being on the UCAD rules, and now his argument on the whole white thing is that actually he passed the VADA test, so why should UCAD give it?
Yeah, man, that's class. Because actually can remember all the stuff at the time as well when Billy Joe was failed in America, and it's like people were saying, well, if it was WADA testing, they would have passed, but it's only because it's VADA, and Eddie Hearn was fucking sitting there, having a go at him, going, but you failed this and you failed that, and I think he's a drug cheat, and he's fucking signed him. But
It's
let's
a
get
marriage
away.
of convenance, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, always is.
He
And do
needs
you
to
know
be.
what?
He needs to be on. So even Frank Warren, if he were to make these fights, he would have always had to put them under zone. So why not cut the middleman and rather than give a split of your fee to Frank Warren for lending the fight to the zone, why not just go direct with Eddie and get these fights done? And I think it's going to be keep him active, have 3 fights, and then retire for Billy Joe.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing. Is I mean he's went with Eddie. Eddie's got Andrade there. He's got access to Triple G. That's maybe not Andrade, but I mean, if Billy can get that Triple G fight, he probably doesn't need to fight again. You know what I mean? That's him set for life.
And in theory, we'll get to this, but he might have access to Canelo more than we think. So, we might have a situation where Billy Joe could fight against a light touch opponent, whether it be John Ryder or someone like that, in later in the year, and then he could fight Golovkin, and then he could fight if he performs well, he could fight against the Canelo, and that's 15 million of money there.
Do you think that Eddie would willingly go to the zone and say, "Listen, I've got a great fight here. How do we not put Billy Joe Saunders and Andrade on?" Because everybody knows that fight fucking stinks. It's not a great fight for the spectator anyway.
I think from a promotional perspective, he's better off keeping them separate rather than diminishing the value of those two, because when you sign a guy like Billy Joe Saunders in a multi-fight deal, you want to put him in a fight where he can maximize his revenue. So you want to put him in a fight where he can win and look good winning. Then you want him to fight against Golovkin or Canelo, and you want Andrade to do the same. And then maybe you switch around, or you fight those guys together, the losers together, something like that, where you still have the appeal. Because if you put him in with Andrade, it means that yes, the winner will fight against Golovkin or Canelo, but they could probably do that anyway. So I think Eddie Hearn will probably want to keep them apart for as long as possible.
Now we know that Billy, he's never been a big ticket seller. I think that we can all accept that. But does going with Matchroom instantly make you more popular? You're more accessible to Sky Sports. You'll get a bit more airtime. You'll show up on things like Soccer AM. You've just does signing with Matchroom instantly give you a better platform?
Yeah, I think Sky is a bigger platform, and also they don't have many world champions or named fighters, so he could headline a Saturday fight night, or a US card. He could be chief supporter or headline one. So I think it's just a better thing for Eddie to have more people that when he negotiates with DAZN or Sky, he can say that we can put Billy Joe in headlining a fight, rather than have, let's say, someone like Callum Smith fighting against another and Dom.
What about Frank Warren? Where does this leave Frank? Because Billy is probably the most gifted guy, or was the most gifted guy in Frank Warren's stable. Where does it leave Frank now?
I don't think. I mean, lots of rumors circulating around why they broke up in the end, or don't work together. But I just think it got to a point where Billy Joe Saunders was in stinkers, and Frank couldn't put him in where anybody to actually entice anybody to care. So I think Frank's better off building your Yards, Dubois, and these guys, and getting the next wave of talent, which Frank has always been very good at doing. So I personally think it doesn't really make a huge difference because nobody was really talking about that BT stable and saying, can't wait for the next Billy Joe Saunders event. People are more excited about Dubois, Joyce, and the heavyweights fighting, and Yard. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I mean, I don't think that Billy's a hardcore fans kind of fighter. You watch him and you appreciate him, but you just don't really look forward to it. He's not got that star quality. If anything, I remember I was a guest on another podcast, and it was around about the time when he brought that video out mocking the girl. She obviously had mental problems, or she was a drug addict, and and that video, it turned my stomach. It I've never really felt the same about Billy Joe after that, and as I said, he's not really somebody that it can carry a full stable. You couldn't build fighters on his undercard because Billy himself, through popularity, is pretty much an undercard fighter.
And you can't trust him to fight. That's the problem. You can't trust him to be fit and you know to actually every time he fights, you're just worried about him pulling out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And is he going to start ballooning up again between fights? And I mean, it's just that there is so many question marks, so many variables about his career as a whole that I mean, as a gamble, and maybe I think that Eddie Hearn's better placed to take a gamble on somebody like him rather than Frank Warren, who a guy like Billy Joe Saunders is pulling out. Then you've not really got a lot else to fill the whole way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I also wouldn't be surprised if we never saw Billy Joe Saunders fight in the UK again. I think, I mean, there's already talk about him fighting on the US card. I think he's a matchroom US signing rather than actually a matchroom UK signing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, there is some issues with that as well. Um, I mean, I don't know if you become Matchroom USA's fighter, can you still then? Are you covered by the Ali Act because you might not be a resident in the US? You wouldn't be breaking any US laws. I think like, stuff like that start coming into it. So could Eddie be managing his career and kind of doing what he's been doing illegally in America? Kind of telling guys who they're fighting next when he shouldn't be doing that.
I think what Billy Joe MTK calls the shots, and I think Billy Joe is one of MTK's marquee fighters, right? So I think what we're probably seeing is MTK working closer with Matchroom, which they've historically done with Frank Warren. Obviously, having the Fox Nation showing MTK stuff, and all Frank Warren's guys are MTK guys. So, and they've also had MTK guys on the Frank Warren card. So I think you're already seeing hints where Eddie Hearn saying that he wants the golden tickets tournament, which is the MTK sort of boxing tournament. He wants that on Sky. So I think what we're seeing is actually the convergence of MTK shows, perhaps, and MTK content and fighters working more closely with Eddie Hearn and probably going to be on the Sky platform more. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if next year we'd see some of the MTK shows that we're seeing on IFL on a Sky Sports Saturday fight night because, frankly, they're better. And I think, frankly, Eddie Hearn really needs the boost of those fighters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong. When we started on this, I was actually going to finish up with the MTK Golden Contract Tournament. As you say, is Eddie Hearn's starting to work a wee bit closer. The winner gets a golden contract. Now it doesn't tell you who the promoter's with, what promoter with, but it just says a world leading promoter. things are starting to point towards it's going to be Eddie Hearn. And could this be how he's going to fill Sky Sports shows?
I think so. You saw, is it Liam Conroy, the guy that was fighting the other week on the show, on the Matchroom show? So you saw him after a good performance, an MTK fighter, usually fighting on the small halls for MTK, going and then I think it's Liam Conway or someone like that. So he ended up on Matchroom, and I think what we'll probably see more of is some of the away fighters on the 50-50 are going to be MTK fighters. If they perform well, they'll probably go on to sign with Matchroom UK. Because MTK are, first and foremost, they're a management company. They aren't a promotional company, but they do run events. So they'll run events in conjunction with Top Rank. So the one we saw in Belfast with Michael Conway
Yeah,
headlining.
they run some brilliant events. Some of the small hall events that they do in Glasgow is superb. You know, you always get a good domestic bust up on there. I've been to a couple actually. You know, I went to one in Edinburgh before, and I've seen one of the most brutal fights I've ever seen through there. You know, it's just you always get a good matchup with the MTK cards. I think, you know, even when I went to watch David Brophy, and he was over. Like he was matched against this guy getting his A side, but the guy was throwing enough back at David Brophy to give him something to think about. So that then makes Brophy box like he's in like he's in a fight, you know, rather than just blasting somebody out, which I think they would get too much of. You know, I went to a Steve Goodwin show when I was in London, and I thought there was maybe a wee bit too much of that, and it ended up forcing me to just go and sit at the bar. But but I mean, don't get me wrong. I know Steve Goodwin does some great work, but I'm just in this show in particular.
I was at the MTK show recently where O'Hara Davis fight against Vasquez, and you had Ryan Walsh fight against I can't remember who, and you had a good card there. So you see guys like Dan Aziz who fought on the white undercard, white Rivas undercard. It's Kieran Conway's the guy that drew with Ted Cheeseman. So you're actually seeing quite a lot of the MTK guys on the Matchroom UK cards, and I think they'll probably end up working closer together, having more of the MTK guys, the best ones, on Matchroom cards as opponents, and then signed as fighters. And yeah, I think it's sort of a natural thing to do because the talent pool in the UK is quite shallow, and as MTK is signing everyone, it makes sense for Matchroom to try and get some of those talents who are the non-Olympian talents, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen with Ultimate Fighter, I mean, this tournament format, especially at small hall level, is fucking really good. You know, it's great entertainment. That I mean, I watched Ultimate Fighter. I caught up a few days later, and you know, I was ended up glued to my screen, and it was one of the ones. It was a full show I was watching, and it was like 3 hours. And even though it was 3 days later and I knew who won, I was sitting there watching the fucking full show. It was great. I thought it really worked for that level of boxing, and seeing guys, you know, making money that can, you know, really give them a lift in the sport. I was like, you know, there definitely is a future for tournament boxing, the tournament format at that level.
Yeah, I think it's easier for people to engage in tournament formats because it's just short, you know, one night of action, you watch something, or even if it's like over a few months, you know who's going to fight who next. And I think that's the entertainment aspect. Whereas in boxing, we might have a world title fight in Saudi Arabia, but we don't know whether it's going to happen, who's signed the contracts, who hasn't.
Yeah, and we have press conferences without the fighters.
We had a question actually about Regis Prograis and World Boxing Super Series. So what's your take on that
I was
situation?
going to... we can touch on that later because I'm going to move on to that, but just to finish up on Matchroom, I had one here and it was for North Bank Bren. Just 2 seconds till I find it. Here it's here. And what it is he sent me a screenshot and he's saying, how can Matchroom claim to have no involvement with the secondary ticket market, yet entire rows are available on StubHub? and he sent me the screenshot, and there's 18 tickets sitting there for sale on StubHub. But I don't think that it's any secret, David. I think that we all know that Matchroom work alongside StubHub, or what, kind of fuel the ticket touting.
Yeah, I think that's evident. And there was last year there was a government clampdown on this whole secondary ticket market, and one of the ramifications was that you have to list your name when you are the seller of the secondary tickets. And what that meant is that now on the secondary ticket market, you can actually see that Matchroom are listing them. Obviously, what they can claim is, oh, people bought tickets, but then they cancelled them, so we're selling them just on secondary ticket market. But I mean, it's one of those things that has been not even a mystery in boxing. Everybody's known this is going on, and nobody's really clamping down on it. So what can we do as fans?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't think that there's. I mean, I went to a Dave Gilmour concert in the Royal Albert Hall, and there was an anti-touting thing. You had to take something with your name and address, which was printed on the ticket. But me and my wife had bought these tickets on the secondary market and met the person down there, and the tickets were face valued at £120, and we paid £350 per ticket.
Wow.
And we just met this guy, and he went up with his stuff with his address on it, and that was so. I don't think that it's something. That was a situation where you had Dave Gilmour in the Royal Albert Hall trying to clamp down and trying to do it, but it's just so easily exploited. If people are willing to pay over the odds, there's always got to be somebody willing to charge them over the odds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do. But I think what we've actually seen is there's been less action, because if you think about the Lomachenko against Campbell tickets, they were still on sale a few weeks after. Whereas back in the day, what would have happened to an event like that, or any Joshua event, it would have sold out in 2 minutes, and then they would have all been in secondary ticket market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was Joshua's last fight in the UK.
Yeah.
There was still, on the day of the fight, like 10,000 tickets left. And if what I remember, I think they actually dished them out to firemen and, NHS staff. And I think that's what they done with the remaining 10,000. But I would just thought that was around about the time this new government legislation come in. That's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence that these events are no longer selling out. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. I mean, it's clearly sort of cause and effect, isn't it? We all know what the problem has been, and now what happens is everything sells a bit slower and gives people a chance to actually buy tickets better.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, sorry, there is another one here. Sent in by the Boxing Madman. It said, why does it take so long for a B sample result? Is that when you can get a NHS blood test in 2 to 3 days quicker if you're actually in the hospital? Well, for what I understand is a B sample only takes, for when you request it, to getting your result takes 4 days. For what I've been told, it only takes 4 days. So this silence, I think, it speaks volumes, because if that come back all clear, there would have been shouting and bawling through the rooftops about how unjust the world is and how everybody's been against Dillian White. Now, where that B samples must have come back, and it must not have been, it must not have been telling the story that White and Eddie Hearn wanted it to tell. And now it seems to be that they're just going to try and suffocate UKAD with legal bills, and and they're going to pull a Tyson Fury. That's what I think is happening here.
Yeah, I think from what I understand is you have to request for the B sample to be tested and to be present. I don't know whether there's a time frame that you have to request it for, but until the B sample comes back, there's nothing banning you from fighting or doing anything. So I imagine they might have not requested it, because what they want to do is to check why the VADA test haven't come back, as positive.
Yeah, but I
So
mean, if you have a B test, I mean, for the drug test that I've done, if you fail an A test, the same sample, the same either whether it be urine or blood, will get then that same sample will get put into another half. It will get put into another beaker and sealed.
yeah,
You know, so then that is a fail-proof system. That is 100% accurate. You know,
yeah, unless you're putting them through wall cavities. Uh,
yeah,
but so from my understanding, the thing is the fighter or the athlete has to request that it gets tested and they have to be present. So and they can bring whoever they want present when they do the test to make sure that the testing is accurate. So what I imagine is that they haven't asked to have the test done yet, and also they are probably running some sort of legal thing to try and figure out why the water test didn't come back as positive to say, well, there must be something wrong that they don't actually ever have to test a B test.
yeah. But I mean, as I say,
I mean, it's all very murky, isn't it? But
yeah,
this is the way around. The way around is that you will say that because there was another testing agent that did the test on the same days, nothing came back. So we're going to sue you for this A test and the leaking of it, and we're not going to do the B test. Won't be run until we're clear what's happened with the A test and why the water test didn't come back. And I
yeah,
mean, UCAD will be shitting themselves because I mean UCAD has no money, right?
yeah. Well,
If
they're
Tyson
massively
if Tyson
underfunded.
Fury's £2 million lawsuit could have bankrupt the whole company, then you know that speaks volumes.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, but it just, I mean, the VADA test means nothing. I mean, just to give people a wee bit of insight here, the VADA test means nothing unless it was took from the same sample. See, unless like you either pee into a beaker and VADA take the exact same test for the exact same sample, then VADA's test is completely irrelevant. You know,
Yeah, and
because things affect you how your body works and things. You know, I've passed drug tests when I know that I should have been failing drug tests. There you go. I know that if I go in and I drink litres of water, and if I do my pee first thing in the morning and then I just keep drinking water, that water then bypasses my kidneys and goes straight to my bladder to come back out. So I'm pretty much peeing Volvic water back out. Now, I know that my next pee would fail. I know that, you know
yeah,
what I mean? You can, that's how you can't go, oh, I passed that drug test, so VADA didn't catch him, well, that means you can't drink. No, that's not how it works. Unless they were all took for the same sample, that is completely irrelevant.
yeah. I think Terry Chappendale made a good point also on his. I think it was on his new podcast that he's just started, but he made a good point that actually the testing methods might be different between WADA and UCAD, and actually UCAD could have better labs or better testing methods. So it's not a case always that one comes back negative or positive because it comes down to how good the scientists are on the testing method. So UCAD could actually be better at testing for specific compounds than WADA.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it. You're only as good as your last test. I mean, I find it bizarre that all these athletes are quite happy to sign up to these things until they get caught, and then it's oh no, that I mean, who would want this? They're so inaccurate, and they try to smear. They do like a smear campaign on the organisation they've been caught by. Instead, they're like, have you ever seen an athlete just come out and say, "Aye, I done it"? Well, matter of fact, we did. Jarrell Miller, you know,
Yeah,
Jarrell Miller was
yeah,
caught bang to rights, and he just come out and says, "Aye, I did. I'm an idiot, and it's cost me a fortune." You know, but 90% of the time, these guys come out and they're innocent victims, and you know, you go at it. If all these guys are so innocent, then what's the point of having drug testing? Because it's so inaccurate. Do you know what I mean?
but Miller wasn't initially innocent, was he?
What was that?
He wasn't initially innocent.
Miller?
First, he said, yeah, he did. Initially, he did say, "Oh, I'm innocent."
Ah,
He
right.
could, he contested it, didn't he?
Yeah,
Then he
in
said,
fact, it
"Oh,
was
yeah,
only
yeah,
after.
yeah." Then he goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe I was innocent. Maybe I did take some stuff." Oh
That's
shit.
right. It was only after he tested positive for a third. a third
And now,
substance. And then I think he kind of admitted, you know what, I'm not going to be able to bullshit my way out of this. But at least he
and
eventually admitted it.
and now his latest thing is that it was his elbow an injury, and he had to take some sort of medication, and for that reason, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, that's us. We've done fucking Matchroom to death. Let's move on to a couple of quicker topics that we can fly through and laugh at. Tyson Fury versus Otto Wallen. Obviously, you're in Sweden just now. Sweden's got to be buzzing. I mean, they could have the heavyweight lineal champion coming back to them.
Yeah, I mean, the question about the lineal champion, if Otto Wallin wins, beats Tyson Fury, does he become the lineal champion?
Well, I mean, they keep telling us that lineal belt's on the line all the time, you know. I mean, I don't think that that's how it works, but don't tell any of the promoters this.
No, no. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a knockover job, isn't it? This is a sparring partner, Joshua's sparring partner, and lots of other guys' sparring partner. That's fighting against Tyson Fury. He's there to be knocked over. I don't really know what he does for Tyson Fury. If you're preparing against, let's say, Wilder, you'd probably want someone that isn't a southpaw and someone that's a bit better, more dangerous. So, it's there to be knocked over, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's there for a purpose, and as you say, he's ain't been knocked over. But for Tyson Fury, I think it's to make him look good in front of a top rank audience while he's on ESPN. You know, I think that's what it's there for. I think that they're looking to build him. But where I have the problem with this is a guy like Tyson Fury's past that stage of his career. He doesn't need that, especially somebody this easy. I think that they're taking a big risk. I think that they've no learned anything from Andy Ruiz and AJ. They're taking a big risk waiting on this Wilder fight, because it's very possible that Ortiz could knock Wilder out this time.
Yeah,
And then what happens? I mean, that's Tyson Fury wasted another year of his career fighting fights that nobody wants to see him in.
yeah. And then we get to the cycle of rematches. Then Ortiz will have another rematch with Wilder. I think I'm going to plug my own article, but the one I just did on Network Wars, and when I was speaking to Stephen Espinoza, one of the things that he said was that the problem with these long-term contracts with star fighters, like, for example, someone like Tyson Fury and Canelo, is that no one actually wants to put these guys. It's a bit like Billy Joe Saunders. There's no incentive for you as a broadcaster to put these guys into tough matchups, because why would you want to risk your fighter that you've paid, in Tyson Fury's case, $100 million to have them on your network for 5 or 6 fights? Why would you want to put them in a tough fight before you can actually make any money on a big pay-per-view out of them? And that's the big challenge that we have with a lot of these guys with so much money in boxing, that you don't have to fight against anyone decent to make career high paydays, life-changing money. I mean, what era do we live in boxing where a guy can make 20 million for fighting another Otto Wallin or, someone like that?
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, there's a lot of sports getting like this across the board. It just seems overinflated, and eventually you'd think that common sense and maybe a bubble would burst, but it feels as if we've been saying this for years, especially about boxing. The bubble's got to burst. You can't just keep doing that. But if anything, this problem seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, look at Canelo fight against Rocky Fielding and making $35 million for that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
That is,
absolutely. And I mean, I don't get me wrong. I mean, Tyson. If this is who Bob Arum is willing to put Tyson Fury in, Tyson Fury's got to be sitting there rubbing his hands, going like, I could come out here, beat this guy up, and be home in time for dinner. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculously overpaid for a night's work. But
yeah, but I don't think that Bob Arum even chooses the opponents, because surely as a promoter like Bob Arum, you'd be fighting against Trevor Bryant or, Dominic Brazil or someone that's an American fighter in the US on US telly that people know, because nobody knew who Tom Schwartz was. Nobody knows who Otto Wallin is. So he does nothing for his profile apart from, nice clips on social media, but it literally does nothing. Like he can't really compare how he does against Wilder or, fight against the Chris Arreola, someone like that.
Well, see, I've actually made a mistake there because obviously Bob Arum cannot have a say in who Tyson Fury fights due to the Ali Act.
Yeah.
This is obvious. This must have came from MTK, but you would imagine the ESPN and Bob Arum at Top Rank have says that yeah, we'll be happy to put that on their platform. Because surely
But
otherwise
usually,
they would just say no. No, that's not good enough. We're going to want something better.
usually apparently what happens with networks is that you give the management will give a list of 7 or 8 fighters that they say potentially they would like they fight against, and then the network will go through them and say yes no, and you might be down to 3 4 names, and then out of those the management will go, okay, how much is or they'll speak to the network, how much are you willing to offer for these fights, and they'll give figures, and then based on that they'll go and make offers for they'll work with the promoter to make offers for the other fighter. So the network management and promoter have some say, but it already stems from the management putting that list together, perhaps with the promoter on who they want to fight. The network has to approve. But in the case of ESPN, clearly they don't seem to really know boxing or care who Tyson Fury is fighting against.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you just went through there, that stuff that we probably you would want to remember. Anybody listening, you want to remember what Riku just says there, because we are going to be talking about something similar probably up next. In fact, we could probably go into it now, but I would only want to say one more thing. If the networks and Top Rank have settled on Otto Wallen as, been in the top, the shortlist of the other 4 guys, how bad must that have list been?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but let's move on to. We'll go back across to DAZN, but it's at the other promoter at DAZN, and this time it's Oscar De La Hoya, who's been upsetting the superstar of boxing, the biggest name in
Ryan
boxing.
Garcia.
Yeah.
The biggest star in boxing, Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, but he's been upsetting Canelo and Ryan Garcia, but I think
Exactly.
it's important to look at these two cases as separate, because one of them doesn't have an argument really, unless he's been in breach of contract, but which I don't think, and the other one really does. Now we'll go with Canelo. Canelo has not been happy because when he's been taking fights to DAZN, and DAZN have been telling him that you're going to have to pay money out of your own guaranteed purse to cover the other fighter, because they're not happy with the level of opponent. Now, for what I understand, again, in the Ali Act, is a platform cannot do that. A platform is seen as a promoter. They can't get involved and tell you that you're not fighting somebody. If they've a pre-arranged, as you say, they cut it down to a short list. If that guy's on that short list, then they can't change the terms. They can't tell you that you're not fighting them. And that's where I think that Canelo is starting to, he's starting to, you can see that Golden Boy have made a deal. For me, this is my opinion, this is how it looks to me. Golden Boy have promised DAZN the Triple G third fight. Canelo doesn't want it, or he doesn't want it yet. Or I actually don't think that he does want it. I think that he proved everything he wanted to prove in the last fight. And now we're seeing DAZN try to play hardball with him because they've gave him this big offer on the back of a promise for Golden Boy. Now, as I said, I've been listening to people debating back and forth about this, but as I say, I don't really think that Oscar had no right to promise a Triple G third fight.
Yeah.
And we've also seen DAZN's not got any right to push Canelo into other fights or threaten to take away guaranteed money from him. And then just to top all this off, we've obviously seen Canelo stripped to the IBF title, which he says he wasn't even informed that he had a mandatory. He believed that Golden Boy were looking out for him. Now it looks more and more like I think it was at Dervyachenko he was
Yeah.
ordered to fight. Derevchenko wanted, was it 8 million? 8 million.
Yes.
And Canelo and his team, do you know they didn't even enter negotiations until deadline day? That's, Golden Boy, that didn't approach Derevchenko's people until the day of the deadline.
Of Lou
But
DiBella.
yeah, and Lou DiBella, Lou DiBella knows the law inside out. He knows everything. Lou DiBella he's a lawyer. That's what he is by trade. And
Yeah.
Lou DiBella's played them. He's absolutely played them. And now Canelo's lost his IBF title. Derevchenko and Triple G is going to fight for that title. And then the winner, and then I think what the plan was is then it would be Canelo try to get his IBF belt back off a Triple G. For me, that's what I think that's what the plan's been, and I think Canelo's now got wise to it, and he's not a happy bunny, is he?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think we have to take it back to when the original Canelo DAZN contract was signed. So that contract was separate to the Golden Boy and DAZN 5-year contract. So when the contract for $350 million for 10 fights between Canelo and DAZN was done, that had sort of nothing to do with Golden Boy. But I think behind Canelo's back, Oscar De La Hoya went and agreed a deal for Golden Boy, which is a separate one. And part of that agreement was that Canelo and Triple G would fight a third fight. And it's all come out sort of that 90% of Golden Boy's revenues come from Canelo. So this has boiled to an escalation point where Canelo and his lawyers have met with Oscar De La Hoya and asked to see all the accounts and all the money that has been coming in through this contract because they want to check if there's any accounting irregularities. And I think it all started from actually our favourite team pop guy, Ryan Garcia, who was not happy that he was headlining a DAZN card and only made about $35,000. And he was the first one that was complaining about Golden Boy not promoting him properly and also not paying him properly. And
Yeah,
obviously, Ryan Garcia is in the same gym as Canelo and trained by Chepo Reynoso. And he started saying, well, I want to see the books from these fights and I want to see actually how much money is everybody making because I feel that I'm promoting myself and I'm being fleeced.
yeah. Well, the thing is with Ryan Garcia, that card that he was on, I believe, generated over $1 million in
Yeah,
profit. Ryan Garcia was paid under 50, was the reports that I've seen, but I don't actually know the exact figures. And he headlined it, and he sells a lot of tickets. Ryan Garcia, he's very popular.
yeah,
But for what I've been, for what I heard was, although it might be unfair, the zone are the ones that's bankrolling these small hall. They,
yeah,
they're the ones that's bankrolling it. What Golden Boy are doing is, they're putting these cards on. It's maybe costing them about 250k to put a full card on, and they're keeping the rest of the money. Ryan Garcia's not getting
yeah.
any bonuses or that. He's getting paid a bog standard minimum, and it's been what he's been on his contract, and that's what Ryan Garcia's not happy about.
Exactly. And he's asked to see the books, and that's made Canelo to think, well, maybe I should look at the books because all these agreements are being made and these side deals, how much money is being kept away from me. And so that's created a bigger problem. And the third big problem is that we haven't been seeing Oscar De La Hoya around a lot. I mean, we know he's had his issues, and maybe some of those demons are still haunting him. But I think a lot of the guys at Golden Boy feel that Oscar De La Hoya hasn't been doing the job as a promoter that he should be doing, and that's caused some friction. So what the Canelo thing is, they entered the negotiations to fight against Kovalev. They lowballed Kovalev. Then in the final moments, they offered the money that Kovalev wanted, but it was too late, and that didn't give them enough time to negotiate with Derevchenko. And nobody ever checked with Yard and Warren if they wanted to step aside, and they were obviously playing hardball, and they wouldn't do. So it was all really badly managed, and this all happened behind Canelo's back. And now Canelo's in a situation where he has no opponents. He's fallen out with Golden Boy, And yesterday, apparently, Joe Markovsky from the Zone, that blonde guy, that's a bit of a twat to be honest. Uh, he was knocking about, and he sort of went through a list of opponents with Canelo, who they could potentially fight for the next fight. And I think one of the opponents that was interesting on that list was Jamal Charlo, the 160-pound Charlo, as a potential guy to have a fight with, and if they could entice him from the PBC to come and fight against Canelo. But because of the whole situation, Derevchenko fighting against Golovkin, which is happening, or very likely to happen. Canelo doesn't have an opponent, and also he wasn't happy about giving away the Mexican Independence Day date. So now he's stuck on the second half of the year. He's one fight. He doesn't have an opponent. He doesn't have his usual date, and there's nowhere ready to go at this very point.
Yeah, and I mean this could get ugly. I mean the worst case scenario is Canelo goes to go his contract and we don't see Canelo for the next 2 years. I don't think it'll come to that because Canelo generates so much money for everybody that it's not worth having him sitting in the stands for 2 years. But I mean, I think that there is. I mean, the Zone are playing a dangerous game here. I know that they're new to the table, but I mean, I can't remember the other guy. I think he used to work with Top Rank or ESPN.
John Skipper.
John Skipper. I've heard John Skipper in interviews saying about the Canelo that they're pushing it. They're pushing the Canelo Triple G free fight. They want that, and then they're saying that should be coming up. And I was like, that language they're using's fucking borderline. I says because they're not allowed to take part in the decision process until it's pretty much been shortlisted done. That's up to Canelo and his management team. It's not like the UK where a promoter can kind of tell you what direction you're going. In the US, that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but then Al Heyman's convoluted that whole argument in many ways.
But Al Heyman is an advisor. And he's a signed on advisor. You see it with Wilder and all. Wilder's got about 6 advisors. Lou DiBella and that,
Oh, Lou's not involved with Wilder anymore.
As you know, no. What's the wee old guy?
Lou's fallen out supposedly with PBC, so he's not involved anymore with Wilder. Al Heyman's the main man, and always has been for Wilder.
Yeah, and that's how you had to laugh with Eddie Hearn saying, "Show me the money." They couldn't prove to the funds. I was like, you've got Shelley Finkel there, who's put on some of the biggest fights, and the last generation of heavyweights, and you've got Al Heyman, who's put on some of the biggest fights in the last 20 years.
Mayweather Pacquiao.
Yeah,
amongst every other Mayweather fight.
I mean, he's probably lost more money down the back of his couch than what Eddie Hearn's made for boxing. And it's show me the funds.
But have you seen this latest where Eddie Hearn has threatened, it's just broken a few hours ago, has threatened Ruiz with legal action unless the fight takes place? I'd like to see Eddie Hearn, a former double glazing salesman, versus Harvard law educated Al Heyman start arguing about the contracts.
Yeah, that's it. Right, well, I think we've kind of took the Canelo thing as far as we can see, but I think you did touch on something that's interesting. Oscar has went off the radar. He's not been showing up to Golden Boy events. He's not been showing up to big stars weigh-ins and press conferences. He's just went off the radar. I think signs are looking like the Oscar has maybe fell off the wagon. I don't know if you've seen this. He tweeted it. I think the video was of Jaime Munguia. And he was talking, and I didn't even really watch the video, but it was more that Oscar had quoted the tweet and just put the hashtag loyalty under it. And this is just after the what do you call it, the Canelo and Ryan Garcia stuff kind of blew up. And I thought, that's no very professional, and that's no something that looks like it's ever going to get resolved if you're doing that. That's kind of petty. That's Eddie Hearn-esque, when you're dealing with somebody like Canelo, that's not really going to do you any favours, because one thing about Canelo is he knows his worth, and if Oscar's taking that kind of childish route with him, then that's what I kind of decided. Is that I'd be very surprised if Canelo is not already trying to find a way out of this contract. And I think that there's a
Yeah.
good chance that he might use the Ali Act. I think there's a good chance that he might use that as a weapon to try and
Well,
get
the
out.
first well, the first thing you probably ask is for the books and if there's any accounting irregularities, then I imagine you've got a pretty easy way out of the contract.
Yeah.
And I think it was a few years ago. Do you remember when there was a lawsuit between Golden Boy against Heyman and Schaefer when Schaefer left Golden Boy? Because basically Schaefer was ushering all the Golden Boy fighters to Heyman back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, so they published all the court transcripts and all the books and stuff like that. And even back then, this is 3, 4 years ago, 80% of Golden Boy's revenues were from Canelo. How much do you think it's going to be now? It's going to be a lot higher. So, I mean, if Canelo were to leave Golden Boy, they're not far off going bankrupt, to be honest.
Yeah. But I think, yeah, I mean, also what I've heard for other places is that the zone are paying some astronomical money. You know, so, like as I say, when a Ryan Garcia show's making like $2 million profit, he was in an arena that holds like 4,000 people.
Yeah,
So where is that? Where the fuck is that money came from? And it must be the money that Golden Boy's been given for the card and no spent it.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
Um, I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'll be interested to see actually whether we see Canelo promotions in the next 12 months or.
We've got to.
Uh,
We've got to. The guy. I think we're just going to be able to take a bit of tracing paper and trace right over Floyd's career and end up with Canelo's. I think that you're going to see Canelo promotions. He's learned everything from Floyd. He's learned how to value himself. He's learned how to get the best deals possible, and I think that that'll be his next step.
Yeah, and there is another, I wouldn't say alternative option, but as a man that likes a conspiracy theory in boxing, I wouldn't be surprised if Dana White, who's hired someone to become Zufra Boxing's, the head of boxing at Zufra Boxing, which is his sort of boxing entity. If we would have Dana White, who's having a press conference in a few months about his boxing entity, we could see, you know, Canelo being the marquee signing and having a stake in the business because who knows?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Canelo fights are Canelo fights are their own thing. You don't need an undercard when you've got a Canelo fight. He is the attraction. He's everything.
Yeah,
So I mean,
exactly.
going to somewhere like that, I mean, you could build it off his back, but I think he would also Dana White would also have to gear up pretty much all the control because it would be built on Canelo's back.
Yeah, but I think sometimes if you want to make an entrance in the market, that might be a way, and give Canelo something to do after boxing as well.
Yeah, yeah, but let's not talk about depressing stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Canelo's going to live forever. I
we
mean,
won't. We might die on the Sunday after Lomachenko Campbell hangover.
aye, oh fuck, tell me about it. And it's not that. I just noticed the other day that it's a Celtic Rangers game. The day after that, the day after that fight. So you might see the worst of me that day.
Excellent.
But also another big story it's been breaking over the last week, and it's a bit of a depressing one. And it's Regis Prograis started legal action against the World Boxing Super Series. Now I know there was court papers filed. He's saying that it's a breach of contract. He's obviously managed with Lou DiBella, and Lou DiBella, it looks as if they've got a strong case because Regis Prograis says that there was an agreed time and an agreed amount to be paid to him by a certain date, and that date has been and went, and he's still not received payment. Now, if there is going to be a breach of contract, that is it. But it's kind of depressing because this was a fight we were looking forward to seeing Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis in the final, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's been well reported that they've sort of run out of money because we had Donaire basically saying that he's going to pull out unless they confirm the date, and the tournament stretched longer than before. We might have. Yeah, it's a big shame because I don't think it's a fight that won't happen because it's a natural fight that will happen at some stage, but it just means it might happen a bit later. Somebody asked a question which was about replacement opponents, isn't there?
Yeah.
So will we have a replacement opponent
Yeah, I think that
if
was North Bank Brennan again.
yeah. Yeah, so replacement opponent. I mean, who is the guy that will be the replacement opponent?
Just get Baranchik back in. That was a good fight with Taylor the last time.
They might have like Relic if he can make the weight, but they,
Victor
you know,
Postol. I was, I know the cards had it wide, but that night in the arena when Josh Taylor fought Victor Postol, I had Josh Taylor needing that knockdown to win, and he got the knockdown. So that's how close I had that fight. But I mean, that wouldn't have been the worst. But even talking about that depresses me because this is a massive fight. This fight makes money in its own. I think so. I don't understand. I was listening to some other people talking about the numbers about this, and obviously the World Boxing Super Series struggled to get a platform in the US and the UK. Now DAZN and Sky Sports took it up, but apparently you're talking it was like $12 million they got the rights for, and when you think about it, all the purses for all the fighters combined at the end of the tournament adds up to over $40 million. It's a business plan that can't really work. You know,
yeah,
where were they expecting to find this funding? Because I mean, Josh Taylor was fighting in front of what 7,000 people. I mean, Regis Prograis probably struggling to be fighting in front of 1,200 people. Where were they thinking they were going to pull the rest of this money from?
yeah. I think the real challenge they've always had is that it's it's been hard to because you don't have many PBC fighters on it, or you don't get many, you know, top rank or golden boy fighters. You mainly get promotion, fighters that are either from European promotional outfits or smaller US promotional outfits. So you're missing those big stars. So you could have had this tournament in theory with likes of Hooker and Ramirez and others, and then you would have had a true, tournament that would interest the US networks. But it's always been quite Eurocentric, and that's why it's been hard to sell those rights in the US and in the UK. Aside from the couple of UK fighters in each, weight division or few of the weight divisions, nobody wants the full package. They just want a few of the fights, and that's been the challenging thing.
Yeah, it's kind of showed. That this format. I'm a massive advocate of the World Boxing Super Series. I've been over the 2 seasons. I've went to watch some great fights, been to some cracking events. Latvia. If anybody ever gets a chance to go to Latvia to watch a fight, go. It's phenomenal. The atmosphere is unbelievable. 20,000 people in the ice hockey arena. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But this has showed the big flaws with boxing nowadays. Too many fighters are aligned with too many promoters, and nobody wants to. You don't want your guy going on to another platform and getting beat. If your guy's going to get beat, you want to make sure you've got your investment back, and that's the sad way. Nobody's really going to want to commit to the Super Series. I mean, Bob Arum right away came out and says Ramirez, I think it is at 140. He just point blank refused to accept that he would even be anywhere near this.
Yeah, I think as well, a lot of if you think about the cruiserweight fights, as good as they are, and as brilliant events as they are Box Nation fights, aren't they? So they don't really have value for the casual fan. So if you're thinking as a platform or network committing to this stuff, none of the fights apart from maybe the middleweight tournament last series was a real subscription driver. Like someone like Josh Taylor, as good as a fighter is, not many people outside of the hardcores know him. So that's the big challenge that you have is that the tournament hasn't actually attracted this season any real stars. Like George Groves was a bona fide star. Callum Smith was wellish known, but there isn't anybody that you could say we all the fans or the man on the street would actually know or even the sporting fan in the pub would know who these people are. and that's why they've really struggled to sell this tournament.
I think that there could be an argument to maybe keep the cruiserweight tournament going and keep it in Europe. You know, where cruiserweights, the thing is, Britain and America is cruiserweight's no, it's not really, there's no really money in there. Our cruiserweights only want to go to heavyweight. You know, you go to cruiserweight to learn your trade and then you go up to heavyweight because that's where the money is. In Europe, cruiserweight's a lot more popular. In that Eastern Bloc as well. You get a load of good cruiserweights and their career cruiserweights. They don't want to move up. They'll spend their full career there. I think if the Super Series does continue for a season 3, I think that's the way it'll go. It's going to be a stripped back version. It's not going to be they'll probably get away with a Hollywood production, and I think that we might see a lower budget, which I think would be sad.
Yeah,
But as we spoke about a wee bit earlier on, oh sorry, just before we go off Regis Prograis, um, they have obviously filed the lawsuit to try and get out of this contract. Now I heard a rumour that obviously Lou DiBella's with him, and Lou DiBella and Bob Arum at Top Rank apparently working quite close together now.
yeah,
I think that there's a good chance that we're going to see Progress coming out of this tournament and going over to Top Rank to fight, where he can get that Ramirez fight, or I think that's the route that he's going to go. I think that maybe Bob's offered them something under the table, or gave them money, and it's going to be a lot more, or give them an opportunity. Bob knows how to build a fighter, as Brendan always tells us. Top Rank can build fighters better than anybody, and Regis
yeah.
Prograis still a little bit of an unknown over there. So maybe that they're seeing it. This tournament's been on too long now. I've gave them long enough. I'm going to head to Top Rank.
Yeah, when I was speaking to for my article on network wars and stuff, when I was speaking to various people in the US high up in the boxing industry, analysts and experts, they all sort of said that the one guy that is a network free agent aside from Mikey Garcia that could be a guy that a lot of people bid for is Regis Prograis. And I think with Ramirez beating Hooker, it sort of makes sense to have him there because the other thing is if he fights against Ramirez, the winner can fight against Crawford. And that's a nice path for any fighter to have two big paydays. So one against Ramirez and potentially one against Crawford at 147. And Top Rank desperately need opponents for Crawford. So, it's a win. It would make sense a deal with Top Rank for at least a few fights to see what happens. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. And one of the arguments in the lawsuits filed by Progrades was that they are losing career earning potential because they haven't had enough fights this year. So this is time when they could be making big money, but they're actually just sitting on the sidelines, wasting time in a tournament that isn't materializing.
Yeah. I've interviewed Regis Prograis, and one thing it does give me a little bit of comfort is that I know that Regis Prograis, before any use scruffed, heard about him, I know that Regis Prograis was wanting that Josh Taylor fight a way back then. Now he's becoming a wee bit more of a star. He still wants that Josh Taylor fight. He likes Josh Taylor. He says he's a fan of Josh Taylor, and I think if this doesn't happen, then yes, it's a disappointment. But I think that we will see it just a wee bit further down the line, as you said at the start. Um,
Yeah.
as we touched on earlier, we've obviously got the MTK tournament kicking on. Is that going to be the World Boxing Super Series legacy? Is it going to be that it brought maybe tournaments back into professional boxing? Granted, maybe it can't work. It's proved that it can't work at the top level, but maybe it's going to give guys a way of getting a step ahead in the game with the lower levels, i.e., Ultimate Boxer, golden contracts, and that. Is that the way forward for this format?
Yeah, I think it was probably they did something that was probably at too big of a scale, so boxing wasn't ready for that. So we'll probably look back at the World Boxing Super Series, and we all enjoyed our good events and nights that we had, whether it be watching Josh Taylor or Groves Eubank Jr. in Manchester, Um, but I think boxing at this stage wasn't ready for that, and it's partly been because when that tournament was started, there wasn't the same money in boxing as there was now. So that was before the Zone, that was before ESPN, before Fox. So BT was its infancy. So you were in a stage of boxing where HBO was exiting the sports, everybody was pulling back, and boxing needed something. Now in a position where there's lots of networks, there's more money than ever before. So actually, it's more hard, as you said, it's harder and harder to make these tournaments because the incentives of making them are less important because you can make a lot of money fighting on these networks.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. It was kind of bad timing as well.
Yeah,
You just think if maybe Sutherland's and that had held back with 6 months, that they might have been able to go out and get one of these big platform deals. They might have been able to go out and get the zone. They might have been able to go out and get, I don't know, who is PBC with Fox. Maybe they could have got something organised with
Showtime.
Fox, you know. But it just seems that timing was wrong, and now I don't think until there's less platforms and less money out there, I don't think that we'll see this format back again, at least at this level. I think you're right
Yeah,
there.
let's just clarify. I think a lot of people often say this. That Sauerland's involved with the World Boxing Super Series. Collar he's the head of boxing for them. So he's the guy that actually puts together the matches and everything else. But actually, the World Boxing Super Series is funded and run by a
It's a
company
Saudi,
that,
mate.
yeah, which has no involvement in boxing at all. So, or isn't like a boxing specialist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't actually remember their name, but the Sutherlands
Yeah,
just run it for them. Yeah,
and it's only
it's a
Collar as well.
consortium. It's a consortium of people. I think it is,
Yeah.
and they put the money up for it.
So I think what they failed at doing is because these aren't boxing guys, they couldn't negotiate the deals and do all the network stuff because it's not the Sauerland's job to get you on TV. So I think these guys just didn't have the links with the networks and weren't able to do the deal. So the failings on their part. So if that's why I think the things like golden contract and if there's other types of tournaments are easier to do because actually MTK are boxing people and they embedded throughout boxing, so they can do this stuff a lot easier than a non-boxing consortium.
Yeah, yeah. And this is just something to finish up with. I find it quite humorous. I find it quite funny. It was you that were informing me of this earlier on, and it's that the PBC have decided that they no longer acknowledge the WBO. Now, this is a bit of a bizarre stance, this isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's because so we all saw the thing where the PBC put the welterweight champs up on the screen, and they didn't have Terence Crawford, and because and that's where it sort of started, and then the BBC, sorry, the PBC have said that they so embed the WBO with top rank that they just gonna ignore they titles and they also just gonna ignore you know, they're just going to ignore them as a governing body and they fighters won't be fighting for WBO belts. So, I mean, the future might hold that every single big promoter will be aligned to one governing body and refuse to acknowledge other belts.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. Where do you draw the line? Do you start acknowledging? Do you just replace WBO with the IBO and say that we're now classing that as one of the big four?
Well,
Where's the line here?
do you remember when PBC started off? The idea was that they wouldn't have any titles, that they would have a PBC title. So the idea was they was a bit like the UFC where you just have a UFC title. And that was eventually the idea that they had. But I mean that kind of died a death after, a year or so. Because they didn't used to make a deal out of their guys having belts or walk in the ring with belts. So I don't think it really makes a big difference because actually, if you look at the WBO, there aren't many PBC fighters that have, WBO belts.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there was, then there would, wouldn't it be smart on their behalf to do that? But it just seems like you don't need to be so public about it. If you don't like the way the WBO is conducting their business, then you don't need to come out and say that our guys are no longer going to fight for them. They don't acknowledge, and then when you're putting graphics on the screen, who somebody like Terence Crawford, who's a worthy world champion, isn't even acknowledged because he has a WBO title. See, when you were telling me this earlier on, it reminded me of a bit I read in Roberto Duran's book. And it was when, I hope I get this right, it was either the WBC or the WBA banned Panamanians for fighting for their title.
Yeah.
And when I was reading the book, I was just sitting and thinking to myself, that's like, how can you just decide to stop a full nation of people that you can no longer box for their title? It was,
What is it? Isn't it Canelo who refuses to have the WBA belt? Remember?
Yeah, what was that about again? I know that he also binned a WBC belt, but obviously him and the WBC are back cool again. But
He's a franchise champ now. Brendan's favourite franchise champ.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and he's earned that. He's earned that title. So people...
Yeah, do you remember when Chris Eubank Jr. fought against George Groves? And Chris Eubank Jr. said, "This is a unification fight." And George Groves said, "I'm not going to pay the sanctioning fees for the IBO. If he wins, he can keep it. If I win, I don't want it."
Yeah, man. Class that. But, Riku, unless you've got anything else you want to discuss, that's us been going for an hour and 25 minutes, so I'm happy to call it a day there if you are.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, it's been another crazy week in boxing. I mean, who would have thought 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we did our last podcast that we'd be having a press conference, Eddie Hearn sitting next to a Saudi Arabian guy explaining the merits of the regime and what a progressive country it is. I mean, only boxing gives you this kind of entertainment.
Yeah, and I mean, we've just had a full...
Omar's his name, Omar.
We have just done a full... Oh, I could have guessed that. There's only about 4 names to pick for. I had a 25% chance to get it. But no, it's a bit crazy that we've just had an hour and a half podcast about boxing and we haven't spoke about one fight. We haven't spoke about one fight that's happened. We haven't reviewed anything. I was like, it's just boxing is just one big soap opera. And it was good actually getting to just, because you can get a laugh better because you're not actually laughing at guys getting beat or that, you're actually laughing at the idiots that are trusted to run boxing. But thanks for coming on. I know that you're over in Sweden, so thanks very much for making the time to come on, Riku. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. I'll see if anybody knows about Tyson Fury tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's only about 8 people in Sweden anyway, so you'll probably meet sisters a lot.
Exactly.
That's it. But mate, you enjoy the rest of your night and what's left there. I'm going to go and hit the sack. I'll catch you later on, buddy.
All right, mate. Speak soon. Take care, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Right, bye. Hey guys, I've been your host, Stephen Donnell. If you like the podcast, please hit like if you're listening on YouTube or leave us a review on iTunes. And we'll catch you next week. See you later.